I stood in my parents' old farmhouse, watching strangers carry away my mother's china. Each piece wrapped in newspaper felt like they were packing up my childhood. Carla burst through the front door, waving papers like victory flags. "It's done," she announced, her voice too bright, too excited. I sold the place. My hands went numb. The teacup I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor Mom had polished every Saturday for 40 years. "You what?" I whispered, unable to process her words. Carla smoothed her designer blouse, that familiar smirk spreading across her face. "Oh, Evelyn, don't be dramatic. You'll thank me once I flip it properly. You never could handle business decisions." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just property. This was where Dad taught me to read on the porch swing. Where Mom and I canned peaches every August. Where I'd spent the last 5 years caring for both of them while Carla lived comfortably 3 states away. "You can't just sell our family home," I said, my voice breaking. But Carla was already pushing papers toward me, a pen in my shaking hand. Outside, neighbors whispered and watched. I signed because I was too shocked to fight. The moving trucks pulled away as the sun set. I sat alone on the porch, the same spot where I'd held Mom's hand during her final summer. My whole body felt hollow. Mrs. Patterson from next door brought me sweet tea without saying anything. She just patted my shoulder and left me there in the growing dark. The humiliation burned worse than the grief. I could hear the whispers already. Poor Evelyn. Let Carla walk all over her again. That younger sister always was selfish. Evelyn took care of those parents for years, and this is what she gets. I wanted to disappear, but something caught my eye as I stood to leave. The real estate sign still stood in the yard, faded and slightly crooked. For sale, it read, not sold. That was odd. Carla had said she'd sold it, papers signed and everything. But if a buyer had closed, why was the sign still up? Why hadn't any locals mentioned who bought it? Our small town talked about everything, especially property sales. I walked closer to the sign, noticing it had been there for months, weathered by rain and sun. Something wasn't adding up, but I was too exhausted to figure it out that night. 2 weeks later, Carla invited me to dinner at the only nice restaurant in town. She arrived in a new car, her husband Dean trailing behind with that same self-satisfied expression. They were both dressed like they'd just closed a business deal, which I supposed they had. My family home. Over overpriced steaks, Carla announced their grand plans. "We're moving in ourselves," she said, cutting her meat with precise strokes. "Dean and I are going to modernize everything. New kitchen, open floor plan, the works." My stomach twisted. "You're going to gut it." Dean laughed, swirling his wine. "Not gut it, Evelyn. Improve it. That old farmhouse has so much potential. We're thinking country retreat, maybe even a bed and breakfast eventually." Carla leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "Think of it as honoring Mom and Dad's memory by making the place actually valuable." I set down my fork carefully. "Mom made me promise something," I said quietly. Carla waved her hand dismissively. Mom was confused at the end. "You know that." But Mom hadn't been confused. Not about this. She'd gripped my hand with surprising strength just days before she died and whispered, "Don't let anyone destroy this home, Evie. There are things here better left alone." I'd thought she meant memories. Now I wasn't sure. I kept thinking about that promise. Sitting in my small rental apartment that night, I pulled out the box of Mom's things I'd saved. At the bottom, beneath old photographs and recipe cards, I found her journal from those final months. The entries were shaky but clear. "Made Evelyn promise today. She doesn't understand why, but she will. The house keeps its secrets, and they must stay buried." My hands trembled as I read further back. Mom had written about Dad, about something that happened 30 years ago. A tragic accident on the property. Our younger brother Timothy had died in a fall near the old root cellar when I was just 10. I barely remembered him, just fragments of a laughing toddler. The grief had nearly destroyed our parents. Dad had sealed the cellar afterward, bolting it shut from the inside somehow. No one ever went down there again. Mom's entry from a year after Timothy's death made my blood run cold. Henry thinks sealing it will help us forget. But I hear Timothy sometimes, in the quiet hours, laughing where he used to play. Henry says it's grief playing tricks, but I know better. Some things shouldn't be disturbed. I closed the journal, my heart pounding. Carla was planning to rip up the kitchen floor, right where the old cellar door was hidden beneath. Carla moved into the farmhouse 3 weeks later with cameras, contractors, and way too much enthusiasm. I drove by one afternoon, unable to stay away despite the pain. The yard was full of trucks and equipment. Carla stood in the doorway directing workers like a general, clipboard in hand. Dean was measuring walls, talking about maximizing the space. I parked across the street, just watching. Carla spotted me and waved, that false brightness in her smile. She didn't invite me in. I was glad. I wasn't ready to see what they'd already destroyed. A contractor came out carrying old floorboards, tossing them into a dumpster. Each crack of wood hitting metal felt like a bone breaking. Then I heard Carla's voice rise, excited. "Dean, come look at this." I couldn't see what they'd found, but I knew. They'd discovered the old cellar door. I'd seen it once as a child, before Dad covered it with new flooring. A heavy wooden door with iron bolts, the kind that belonged in a castle, not a farmhouse. I watched Dean disappear inside, then return with a crowbar. They were going to open it. I drove away before I had to witness it, Mom's words echoing in my mind. Better left alone. The first text came at 2 in the morning. "Evelyn, did Mom ever mention anything weird about the house?" It was from Carla, unusual because we rarely texted. I stared at my phone in the dark, debating whether to respond. Finally, I typed back, "Like what?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Nothing. Never mind. Workers are just superstitious. The next day, I ran into old Mr. Hayes at the grocery store. He'd done construction work around town for 50 years. "Heard your sister's fixing up the old place," he said, loading canned goods into his cart. "How's that going?" I shrugged. "You'd have to ask her." He paused, giving me a strange look. "Funny thing. I got a call from her contractor. Wanted me to help with the kitchen. I said no." "Why?" I asked. Mr. Hayes shifted uncomfortably. "Your daddy asked me once years back to help him seal that cellar. He paid me extra to use special bolts, the kind you can't open from outside. Said it was for safety, but his eyes." He trailed off. His eyes told a different story. That evening, another text from Carla. "Power keeps flickering. Doors won't stay closed. This place is a mess." I didn't respond. Then at midnight, "Do you hear humming when you're alone?" Dean swears he hears a woman humming old songs. I turned off my phone and tried to sleep, but couldn't. A week later, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No name, no postage, just my address written in Carla's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "If you knew something about this house, tell me now. This isn't funny anymore." Her words were sharp, almost desperate. 3 contractors had quit in the past week, she'd heard through town gossip. They wouldn't explain why. I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a response I never sent. Just one sentence. "You already broke the first rule, now it's yours to face." Instead, I tucked it into Mom's journal for safekeeping. Evidence, perhaps, of when I'd known things would fall apart. But I wasn't cruel enough to send it. Carla had made her choices. She'd have to live with the consequences. Mrs. Patterson called me that afternoon. "Your sister's having a hard time with that renovation," she said carefully. "Workers are talking. Say strange things are happening. Cold spots in sealed rooms. tools going missing and turning up in odd places. One man swore he saw a shadow of a small child running past the cellar door. I thanked her for telling me and hung up, my hands shaking. Timothy. I hadn't thought about my baby brother in years. Had barely let myself remember him. But Mom had. Every day until she died. The breakthrough came when Dean called me directly, something he'd never done before. His voice was strained, professional demeanor cracking. Evelyn, we found something. A lockbox under the floor beam. It's full of old papers, ledgers. Some of them have your name on them. He paused. A lot of them have your name on them. I drove to the farmhouse, my first time inside since Carla had taken over. The place was torn apart, walls exposed, floors ripped up. It looked violated. Dean led me to the kitchen, where a metal box sat on the counter, contents spread out like accusations. I recognized Dad's handwriting immediately. Bills. Receipts. A ledger tracking money borrowed and repaid. Years of debt I'd helped clear after his death, using my teacher's pension and savings. This shows the house was underwater financially, Dean said, running his hand through his hair. Your father owed everyone. But these receipts show you paid it all off over 15 years. He looked at me differently then, seeing me for the first time. The house was only put in Carla's name because of some legal technicality about joint property when your mother got sick. But you're the one who actually saved it from foreclosure. Carla appeared in the doorway, her face pale. She'd heard everything. You knew, she whispered. I nodded slowly. I knew. And I never corrected it because I thought family mattered more than paperwork. The words hung heavy between us. I'd let her think she'd inherited something she'd never earned. Now she understood what she'd really taken. The town turned on Carla faster than I'd expected. Within days, the local paper ran a piece about the troubled Rourke farmhouse renovation. The reporter, an old student of mine, had done her research. She'd interviewed neighbors who remembered the tragedy, workers who refused to return, even pulled old county records showing the property's complicated history. The headline read, Local Sister's Dream Renovation Becomes Nightmare. Carla's social media, usually full of design photos and lifestyle posts, went silent. I heard through Mrs. Patterson that Dean's business partners were getting nervous. He'd used the farmhouse as collateral for renovation loans, selling them on the country retreat dream. But now the property was gaining a reputation. People whispered about curses and bad luck. Old-timers remembered Timothy's accident and shook their heads. That house never did sit right after, they said. I attended Sunday service like always, sitting in the same pew where our family had sat for generations. People approached me with sympathy, not pity. You were a good daughter, Evelyn, they said. You did right by your parents. Reverend Thomas asked if I was okay. I told him the truth. I'm at peace. And I was. I'd done nothing but stay silent and let the truth reveal itself. Carla's choices were destroying her reputation far more effectively than any revenge I could have planned. The cracks appeared overnight. Carla posted panicked photos in a private message. Long fissures running across freshly painted walls like lightning strikes. This wasn't here yesterday, she wrote. The contractor says it's impossible. The foundation is solid. But the cracks kept spreading, branching out like veins across every surface they'd renovated. Then came the pipe burst, flooding the new bathroom Dean had installed. The water damage was extensive. Their insurance company sent an inspector. I heard about the results from my lawyer, an old friend named Mr. Thorne who'd handled Mom's estate. The insurance is denying the claim, he told me over coffee. Apparently, the deed's history is under dispute. There are questions about whether Carla had the legal right to make those improvements. Without clear ownership, they won't cover repairs. Carla showed up at my apartment that night, something she'd never done. She looked 10 years older, her hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes. You did this, she accused, standing in my doorway. You're sabotaging us somehow. I stepped aside to let her in, but she didn't move. "I haven't done anything," I said calmly. "You wanted the house. You got it." Her face crumpled, but she turned and left before I could say more. I watched her drive away in her expensive car, heading back to the farmhouse that was eating away at everything she'd built. Mrs. Patterson brought me something the following week. An old trunk she'd found in the barn behind the farmhouse, forgotten in the chaos of renovation. "This belonged to your mother," she said, helping me carry it into my apartment. "I remember her keeping special things in there. Thought you should have it." Inside, beneath yellowed linens and ancient photographs, I found a sealed envelope. "To the daughter who stayed," was written on the front in Mom's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter dated 2 weeks before she died, when she'd still been lucid. The words made my breath catch. "Evelyn, my faithful girl. You need to know the truth about your sister. When Carla went to college, we couldn't afford the tuition. Your father sold part of our land, the good acres by the creek, without telling you. That money paid for Carla's education, her apartment, her start in life. We never told you because you were already sacrificing so much, working to help us. Carla doesn't know either. She thinks she earned it all herself. But you were robbed twice, my dear. Once when we sold that land, and again when she took what was left. I'm sorry. I should have been stronger." I read it 3 times, each word burning deeper. The land Dad had sold was worth a fortune now. That creek ran year-round, perfect for development. Carla had built her success on my inheritance, and she didn't even know it. At midnight on a Friday, Dean finally forced open the cellar door. I wasn't there, but Carla called me hysterical at 1 in the morning. "We opened it," she sobbed. "God help us, we opened it." I could hear Dean shouting in the background, Carla trying to calm him down. "There's nothing down there," she continued, her voice breaking. "Just dust and broken jars and one small wooden chest." But inside that chest. What was inside? I asked, though part of me already knew. "Dad's will," she whispered. "The real one. Unfiled and unsigned, but dated just before he died. It leaves everything to you, Evelyn. Every single thing. The house, the land, everything. Mom witnessed it. There's a note attached. To my daughter who stayed when everyone else left." The line went quiet except for Carla's ragged breathing. "You knew," she said finally. "You've known all along." I hadn't, actually. I'd known Dad wanted to make things right before he died, but I thought he never got the chance. Turns out he'd tried, hiding his intentions in the one place Carla would eventually find them. "Mom asked me to protect the house," I said carefully. "This is what she meant. Not ghosts or curses. The truth." 3 days later, the fire alarm went off at the farmhouse. Dean smelled smoke, and every detector in the house started shrieking. Fire trucks came screaming up the driveway, but the chief, Tom Winters, found no fire. What he did find was faulty wiring throughout the entire renovation. "This is dangerous," he told Carla and Dean, his face serious. "Unpermitted work. Code violations everywhere. I have to file a formal complaint with the county." The renovation ground to a halt. Overnight. Literally. The county inspector came the next morning and red-tagged the entire property. No work could continue until everything was brought up to code, and that meant ripping out most of what Carla and Dean had already done. I heard they'd spent over $80,000, all of it essentially wasted. Tom stopped by my apartment that evening. "Your dad asked me once to keep an eye on that place," he said. "Made me promise that if anyone ever tried to change it the wrong way, I'd make sure proper permits were filed. I kept that promise." So Dad had protected the house even after death, setting safeguards only someone who cared would notice. Carla had rushed in with money and ambition, never bothering with legal permits or proper inspections. Now she was paying the price for her arrogance. The bank came calling in early autumn. Carla had financed the renovation with high-interest construction loans, using the farmhouse as collateral. She'd been so confident she could flip it quickly, make a profit, move on to the next project. But now the house was worthless, possibly worth less than before she'd started. The damage, the reputation, the legal questions about ownership, it all added up to disaster. Mr. Thorne called me with an update. "Your sister is going to default on those loans," he said. "The bank will start foreclosure proceedings soon. Given the complications with the title and your father's will, this could get very messy." He paused. "Unless you want to step in." I'd been expecting this. "Not yet," I replied. "Let things unfold naturally." "You're very patient," Mr. Thorne observed. "Most people in your situation would want immediate justice." But I'd learned patience caring for dying parents. I'd learned that rushing never made things better. Carla needed to understand the full weight of what she'd done, not just to me, but to our family's legacy. Justice wasn't about speed. It was about thoroughness. The town fundraiser was Carla's public unraveling. The Autumn Festival, an event our family had helped organize for generations, brought everyone together. Dean showed up drunk, which was unusual for him. He'd always been so controlled, so polished. But the stress had broken something inside him. He spotted me across the crowded pavilion and stumbled over, voice too loud. "This is your fault," he slurred, pointing. "You cursed us. You did something to that house." The crowd went silent, everyone watching. Mrs. Patterson stepped between us protectively. Reverend Thomas moved closer, ready to intervene. But I stayed calm, looking Dean in the eyes. "I did nothing but care for my parents while your wife lived 3 states away," I said quietly. "I paid their debts. I held their hands when they died. I protected what they built. If that's a curse, then I'm guilty." People started murmuring, not in judgment of me, but of Dean, of Carla, who'd appeared behind him, trying to pull him away. They remembered now. Years of me visiting my parents every day, taking them to doctor appointments, managing medications, sitting with them through long nights. And Carla? She'd visited twice a year, always with excuses about work and distance. The sympathy that had briefly flickered toward her vanished. For the first time, I saw real fear in Carla's eyes as she realized the entire town had turned against her. A reporter approached me after the festival incident. She wanted to write a follow-up story about family dynamics and caregiving, using Carla and me as examples. "This could really embarrass your sister," she said honestly. "The contrast between what you did and what she did, especially with how things have turned out. It's compelling drama." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "No," I said. "She'll undo herself without my help." The reporter looked surprised, maybe even disappointed. But she respected my decision. "That's very gracious of you," she said. I shook my head. "It's not grace. It's understanding that some lessons can't be taught. They have to be lived." Later, Mr. Thorne told me that my refusal to pile on had actually strengthened my position. "People respect restraint," he explained. "By not attacking her when you could have, you're showing real character. Meanwhile, every desperate move she makes just looks worse." He was right. Carla's frantic attempts to fix the house, her angry social media posts blaming contractors and bad luck, her husband's public meltdown, it all painted a picture of people out of control. And my silence, by contrast, suggested strength and dignity. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. The county assessor came in October to evaluate the farmhouse for potential foreclosure proceedings. I received an official summons to attend for record verification, since my name was now coming up in multiple documents related to the property. When I arrived, Carla was already there, looking smaller somehow, worn down by months of fighting. The assessor, a stern woman named Mrs. Holloway, spread documents across the kitchen table that was somehow still intact. "We have some conflicting information about this property," she said. "Multiple wills, different names on various documents, and significant questions about who actually maintained and financed this house over the past 20 years. I produced my records, 15 years of tax payments, repair receipts, utility bills, all in my name. Dad's and signed will from the seller. Mom's letter confirming the story. Mrs. Holloway reviewed everything carefully, making notes. Carla sat frozen, watching her dreams dissolve in real time. This will need legal review, Mrs. Holloway concluded. But preliminarily, it appears the ownership transfer to Ms. Carla Rourke may not have been legally sound. Ms. Evelyn Rourke has a strong claim to the property. Carla made a small sound, like something breaking inside her. I looked away, giving her that much privacy at least. Mr. Thorne worked quickly once Mrs. Holloway flagged the issues. Within 2 weeks, he'd uncovered the critical error. When Mom had gotten sick, the lawyer she'd used, not Mr. Sanderson, who'd retired, but a younger man neither of us knew well, had incorrectly filed the deed. The house should have been in joint tenancy between Carla and me, not solely in Carla's name. It was a clerical mistake, but a crucial one. What this means, Mr. Thorne explained in his office, is that legally, you own half this property and always have. Carla cannot sell, lease, or mortgage it without your express consent. He looked at me seriously. Every financial transaction she's made regarding this house is potentially void. The sale that never completed, the renovation loans, all of it. The implications hit me like a wave. Carla's entire scheme had been built on a false foundation. She'd never actually owned the house. Couldn't have sold it even if she'd wanted to. All that money she'd borrowed, the contractors she'd hired, the permits she'd tried to get, none of it was legally valid. She's not just facing foreclosure, Mr. Thorne continued. She's facing potential fraud charges if the bank decides to press the issue. Bankruptcy papers were filed by November. Carla and Dean had no choice. The contractors were suing for unpaid bills. Apparently the loans hadn't covered everything, and they'd maxed out credit cards trying to finish the work. The bank was threatening legal action over the fraudulent collateral. Dean's business partners had quietly dissolved their company, cutting ties with him completely. Everything was collapsing. Mrs. Patterson brought me the local paper one morning. The headline read, Rourke Farmhouse, From Family Treasure to Financial Disaster. The article detailed every misstep, every failed promise, every dollar lost. It painted Carla as greedy and short-sighted, though it never quite said those words directly. Dean came across as weak, easily manipulated. I felt a pang of sympathy reading it, despite everything. That afternoon, my phone rang. Carla. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Please, was all she said at first. Just that one word, broken and small. Please, Evelyn. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know what I did was terrible. But please, help us. We're going to lose everything. I closed my eyes, thinking of Mom's letter, Dad's hidden will, all those years of quiet sacrifice. I'll think about it, I said finally and hung up. The bank scheduled the foreclosure sale for the first week of December. The farmhouse would be auctioned on the courthouse steps, a public humiliation that would close this chapter for good. Unless someone intervened. I spent 3 sleepless nights deciding what to do. Part of me wanted to let it all burn, let Carla learn the hardest lesson possible. But another part, the part Mom had raised, couldn't quite do it. I called Mr. Thorne. I want to make an offer, I said. To buy the property legitimately, under my name. Clear all the debts. Settle with the contractors. But I have conditions. He listened carefully as I outlined my terms. The house would be mine, legally and completely. Carla and Dean would have 30 days to move out quietly, no drama, no public scenes. In exchange, I wouldn't press charges for the fraudulent mortgage, and I'd give them enough money to start over somewhere else. Not much, but enough. That's very generous, Mr. Thorne said. Why? I thought about that. Because Mom wouldn't want me to destroy my sister, even if she deserves it. She'd want me to be the bigger person. He drew up the papers that afternoon. The bank, tired of the mess, accepted immediately. Carla agreed through her lawyer, too broken to negotiate. By the end of the week, the farmhouse was legally mine. News spread fast in our small town. People stopped me at the grocery store, at church, at the post office. "You saved your sister," they said. "Even after everything she did, you saved her." But I knew the truth. I hadn't saved Carla. I'd shown her exactly how completely she'd failed. Every time she thought of that farmhouse, she'd remember that I was the one who stepped in when no one else would. I was the one with the resources, the patience, the strength to do what needed doing. That was a burden she'd carry forever, heavier than any legal judgment. Mr. Thorne said it perfectly over coffee one morning. "You know what you did, don't you? You proved you were always the stronger one. Not louder, not flashier, but stronger where it counts." I sipped my coffee, watching the street through the diner window. I just did what needed to be done. Carla and Dean started packing the following week. I didn't visit during that time, giving them space to face their failure privately. But Mrs. Patterson kept me updated. "They worked in silence mostly," she reported. "No arguments, no breakdowns, just quiet acceptance. The house they tried to remake into their image was rejecting them, and they finally understood why." Carla asked to see me one last time before they left. We met at the farmhouse on a cold December morning, frost covering the ground. She looked older, thinner, like the experience had hollowed her out. "You won," she said simply, standing on the porch. It was the same porch where we'd played as children, where Mom had snapped pictures of us in Easter dresses, where Dad had taught me to catch fireflies in mason jars. "No," I replied. "The house did. I just took care of it the way Mom asked." Carla's eyes filled with tears. "I was horrible to you. To them. I thought I was so smart, so successful. But I was just selfish." I didn't disagree. "Do you understand now why Mom made me promise?" I asked. She nodded slowly. It wasn't about ghosts or curses. It was about respect. About understanding that some things matter more than money. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single key. The original key to the farmhouse, the one Mom had given me years ago. "You'll always have a place here," I said carefully. "If you come back right. If you remember what this house really means." Carla took the key with shaking hands, holding it like it might break. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she walked to her car, got in beside Dean, and drove away. I watched until they disappeared, then turned to look at the house that had been worth fighting for. I spent the winter restoring the farmhouse exactly as my parents had left it. No fancy renovations, no open floor plans, no country retreat nonsense. Just careful repairs, historically accurate paint colors, and a deep respect for what the house had always been. Neighbors stopped by to help. Mr. Hayes came with his tools and knowledge, refusing payment. "Your daddy would have wanted this done right," he said, replacing the floorboards Carla had torn up. Mrs. Patterson brought old photographs to help me remember details. The color of the kitchen curtains, the pattern of the wallpaper in the hallway, the exact shade of blue Mom had painted the sewing room. Slowly, the house came back to life, not as something new but as something remembered. Tom Winters inspected everything personally, making sure all the code violations were fixed. "This feels right," he said, standing in the restored kitchen. "Like the house is breathing again." I planted a rose garden in the spring, right where the old cellar entrance had been. I'd had it properly sealed, filled with concrete, made safe forever. Those secrets could stay buried now, honored but not disturbed. The roses, the same heirloom variety Mom had grown, would bloom there every summer, a living memorial to what had been lost and what had been saved. Carla sent me a letter 6 months later. She and Dean had moved to another state, started over with quiet jobs and a modest apartment. "We're learning to live smaller," she wrote. "To appreciate what we have instead of always wanting more. I think about the farmhouse every day. About what I almost destroyed. About what you saved." She asked if she could visit sometime, not to stay, but just to see it. To remember. "I understand if you say no," she wrote. "I know I don't deserve it." I read the letter on the porch, the same spot where this whole story had started. The house was peaceful now, filled with the sounds it should have, birds in the eaves, wind through the trees, the creak of old wood settling. I wrote back that yes, she could visit. But only if she understood that the house belonged to the family, not to any one person. That it was a trust one held for all of us, including Timothy, whose memory still lived in these walls. Her response came quickly. I understand. Thank you for teaching me what I should have learned years ago. I tucked the letter into Mom's journal, adding it to the story that had played out. Maybe someday, when I was old and it was time to pass the house on, this would all make sense to whoever came next. The importance of patience, of quiet strength, of choosing dignity over revenge. I sit on the porch now as evening falls, the same spot where Mom sat during her final summer. The old for sale sign is gone, hauled away months ago. The farmhouse has stopped being a piece of property and become a home again. Sunlight pours through the windows, catching on the lace curtains Mom sewed 40 years ago. Everything is as it should be. In the kitchen, Mom's china sits in the cabinet where it always belonged. The china Carla almost sold off to strangers. The floorboards are solid beneath my feet, hiding no more secrets, just holding the weight of history and family. The rose garden outside is blooming, red and pink and white, filling the air with fragrance. I whisper to the house, to Mom's memory, to everyone who loved this place. We kept your promise, Mom. The words feel right, true. I protected what mattered when no one else would. Not through revenge or cruelty, but through patience and truth. The house stands as proof that some things can't be bought or sold or torn apart for profit. They can only be honored. In the distance, I hear a car on the road, but it passes by. The farmhouse isn't for sale. It isn't a project or an investment. It's home, finally and completely. And that, I think, is the only kind of victory that matters. Not defeating Carla, but saving what was worth saving. The house didn't destroy her. She destroyed herself by forgetting what our parents taught us. That family, memory, and integrity matter more than any amount of money or success.